My best friends body shamed me for years and said that they were just being honest. They stopped laughing when nobody wanted to be seen with them anymore. I had the same friend group since freshman year of college. 5 of us. Me, Billy, Kay, Yolanda, and Fern. We met during orientation week and stayed tight all 4 years and kept it going after graduation. Group chat every day, brunch every other Sunday, birthday dinners that someone always planned 2 months early. I loved these girls. I thought they loved me too. The comments started small and I didn't even register them as mean at first because they came wrapped in smiles. Billy told me once that I was brave for wearing a sleeveless top and I said thank you because I thought she was complimenting the shirt. She wasn't. Kay asked me at a restaurant if I really needed a second breadstick and I thought she was joking, so I laughed and grabbed 2 more. Yolanda once told me I had such a pretty face, which sounds nice until you realize that sentence always stops before it says something else. Fern was the quietest about it, but she'd do this thing where every time I ate something, she'd look at my plate and then look at hers, and then look back at mine like she was doing math in her head. They were all a size 2 or 4, and I was not. I've been the biggest person in every room since I was 12. My body did what it did, and I fed it and moved it and dressed it and never once felt bad about it, until these 4 women started turning every meal and every outfit and every mirror into a measurement. By year 3, Billy stopped being subtle. She started tagging me in workout challenges and sending me meal plans she found online. She said she was just sharing. Kay started ordering for me when we went out. She'd tell the server I wanted the salad before I could open my mouth, and when I'd change it to what I actually wanted, she'd raise her eyebrows and say, okay. Yolanda uninvited me from a beach trip because she said the house they rented had a small shower and she didn't want me to be uncomfortable. She said it like she was doing me a favor. Fern once grabbed my arm while we were shopping and steered me away from a rack of dresses and toward a section in the back without saying a word. I pulled my arm away and asked what she was doing, and she said she was helping me find my section. My section. Like I needed to be sorted. The worst one was Billy's birthday pool party. I showed up in a swimsuit because it was a pool party and that's what you wear. Kay pulled me aside before I even got to the backyard and told me maybe I should keep my cover up on because there were going to be people there who didn't know me and she didn't want me to feel self-conscious. I asked her why I would feel self-conscious. She said she was just looking out for me. I wore the swimsuit. I got in the pool. I had a good time, but I noticed them, all 4 of them at different points during the party, looking at me in the water and looking at each other. Not laughing, just looking. Billy's cousin Harper was there and she was around my size and she was wearing a bikini and nobody said a word to her because Harper wasn't in our friend group and they only did this to people they thought they owned. They didn't say these things because they were worried about me. They said them because they thought being close to me gave them permission. The breaking point was a Sunday brunch 6 months ago. All 5 of us were at our usual spot. The waiter came and I ordered pancakes and a side of bacon and a coffee. Kay looked at me and said, "You're really going for it today, huh?" Billy laughed. Yolanda looked down at her menu. Fern did the plate math thing. And right then, a woman sitting at the table next to us who I had never met before leaned over and told Kay that was a rude thing to say. Kay told the woman to mind her own business. The woman said she could hear everything they said and it had been going on since they sat down. She was right. Before I ordered, they had already made 2 comments about the bread basket. Kay turned red. Billy told the woman they were just joking around. The woman looked at me and asked if I was laughing. I wasn't. I sat there and realized a complete stranger at the next table had more respect for me than 4 women I'd known for almost a decade. I ate my pancakes. I ate my bacon. I drank my coffee. And then I told them I was done. Not with brunch. With them. Kay said I was being sensitive. Billy said they always talked like that, and I never had a problem before. Yolanda said she didn't think they were being mean. Fern didn't say anything because Fern never said anything. She just steered and stared and calculated. I paid my bill and I left. I didn't blow up. I didn't make a scene. I just stopped showing up. I left the group chat. I stopped answering calls. I declined every invitation. 3 weeks later, my phone lit up at 11 at night, and it was Fern. She sent me this long text. She said she missed me. She said things weren't the same without me. She said maybe they all went too far, and she was sorry if I ever felt hurt. Then she got specific. She brought up inside jokes from freshman year, stuff I hadn't thought about in forever. She mentioned the time we all drove 6 hours to the coast sophomore year and got lost twice and ended up sleeping in the car at a rest stop because nobody wanted to pay for a motel. It was warm. It was real. It sounded like the Fern I thought I knew before everything got so ugly. I read that message 4 times. The next day I called my mutual friend Reggie. I needed someone outside of it to tell me if I was being crazy. I read the whole thing to him word for word. When I finished, there was this long pause. Then he said, "Billy told Fern to text you. I heard her say it at dinner last week. She said you'd come back if Fern was the one who asked because Fern never said anything mean out loud." I just sat there holding the phone. Every word Fern wrote was picked because Billy knew exactly which buttons to press. The memories, the inside jokes, the trip. That wasn't Fern reaching out. That was Billy using Fern like a tool because she knew Fern was the safe one. Even the apology was a strategy. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Kay texted, "Hey, we're doing brunch this Sunday, your usual spot. Would be so good to see you." Casual, light, like I'd just been busy. Then another one came in from Yolanda. "We all really want you back. It's not the same without you." 3 texts from 3 different people in 1 week. That wasn't 3 friends who all happened to miss me. That was a campaign. I didn't reply to any of them. Then my mom called. She said, Billy's mom called me. She said you're ignoring all your friends and she's worried about you. Are you okay? I closed my eyes. Billy went to the parents. She actually called her own mother and had her mother call my mother to make it seem like I was the one with the problem. I told my mom the truth. All of it. The comments, the salad ordering, the swimsuit thing, the beach trip I got kicked off of because Yolanda said the shower was too small, the dress shopping where Fern grabbed my arm and walked me to my section, the brunch and the stranger. My mom went quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You should have told me years ago. I never liked how you talked about yourself after you saw them." That hit me in a place I wasn't ready for because I didn't even know I was doing it. I didn't notice that I came home from brunch and stood in front of the mirror pulling at my shirt. I didn't notice that I started saying things like I probably shouldn't when someone offered me food, but my mom noticed. The following Sunday I was driving to the grocery store and my route took me past our usual brunch spot. The light turned red right in front of it and I looked through the window and there they were, all 4 of them at the same table we always sat at. Billy was talking. Her hands were moving the way they always do when she's in control of a conversation, and the other three were just sitting there. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was leaning in. Kay was staring at her plate. Yolanda was looking at her phone. Fern was stirring her coffee and not drinking it. They looked like 4 people who had to be there instead of 4 people who wanted to be there. The light turned green and I drove. Meanwhile, I had already started building something new. I went to a cooking class by myself. I joined a weekend hiking group. These people were funny. They were kind. They talked about their jobs and their dogs and their bad dates, and not once did anyone look at my body like it was part of the conversation. I started hosting small dinners at my apartment. Nothing fancy. I'd make a big pot of something and people would bring wine or dessert, and we'd sit around my tiny table and eat until we were full and then eat some more. Nobody did plate math. Nobody raised their eyebrows when I went back for seconds. Nobody ordered for me. One night after everyone left and I was at the counter washing dishes, I just stopped and stood there with my hands in the soapy water, and it hit me. The heaviness I had been carrying around for almost a decade wasn't my body. It was never my body. It was those 4 women. My body was fine. My body was always fine. The thing that was dragging me down was the constant low hum of people I loved telling me I shouldn't take up so much space. And now that hum was gone and I felt lighter than I ever had. Not physically, just everywhere else. About a month into my new routine, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it and Fern was standing there. No text first, no call, just Fern on my doorstep with red eyes and tears already falling down her cheeks. She opened her mouth and her voice cracked and she said, "I know I should have said something. I know I just stood there every time. But I need you to know I never thought those things about you." I stood in my doorway and looked at her. I didn't feel the relief I thought I would. I felt tired, because even now, even with tears on her face, she was making it about what she thought and not about what she did. So I said it. I looked at her and said, "Then why did you steer me away from the dresses, Fern? Why did you look at my plate every single time?" She didn't answer. Her mouth opened a little and then closed. The tears kept coming but no words came with them, because there was no good answer. I kept my hand on the door and I didn't step aside. I said, "I don't need you to feel bad. I need you to understand that watching someone get hurt and saying nothing is the same as hurting them. You were never quiet because you disagreed with them. You were quiet because it wasn't about you." Fern just stood there. She didn't argue. She didn't try to explain. She just cried and nodded a little, and after a few seconds she turned around and walked back down the hall. I closed the door and locked it and walked to my couch and sat down. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from the effort of it. People don't tell you how much it takes out of you to hold a boundary when someone is standing in front of you falling apart, but giving in a little is how I ended up spending 8 years eating salads I didn't order and wearing cover-ups at pool parties and getting sorted into sections at clothing stores. So I sat on my couch and I let the shaking stop, and I didn't text Fern to soften what I said. I meant every word. A few weeks later, I decided to throw a real housewarming dinner even though I'd lived in my apartment for 2 years. It wasn't about the apartment. It was about celebrating the people who actually wanted to be there. I invited the hiking group, Reggie, a few coworkers, and Mara. Mara was the woman from the brunch who called out Kay's comment. I tracked her down through the restaurant a few weeks after everything went down, and we'd been texting ever since. She was funny and blunt, and the kind of honest that didn't come with a knife hidden behind it. Reggie came over early to help me set up. We were pushing chairs around when he stopped and gave me that look. He said, "You should know that Billy found out about this dinner. Yolanda saw you posting about it. She told Billy, and Billy said something about showing up to clear the air." I felt my stomach go tight for a second, but I didn't panic. A year ago, the idea of Billy showing up somewhere I was would have sent me into a spiral. I would have canceled, but this was my apartment, my table, my food, my people. So I looked at Reggie and said, "If she shows up, she shows up. I'm not hiding from her in my own home." The dinner started, and it was everything I wanted it to be. 12 people around a table. I made way too much food on purpose. A big pan of baked pasta, a roast chicken, roasted vegetables, garlic bread, a salad that was actually good because I made it the way I liked it, with real dressing and cheese and croutons. There was a pie from the bakery Reggie liked, and a plate of brownies someone from the hiking group brought. The table was full and loud and warm, and nobody counted a single thing. About 20 minutes in, Mara stood up. She tapped her glass with a fork like she was at a wedding, and the whole table got quiet and looked at her. She raised her glass and said, "To the woman who made all this food and didn't ask permission from anybody." Everyone laughed. The hiking group cheered. Reggie whistled. We were about halfway through the meal. The wine was flowing. Somebody had started a debate about whether pineapple belongs on pizza, and it was getting heated in the fun way where everyone is laughing while they argue. I was in the middle of cutting another piece of garlic bread when there was a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on a napkin, got up, walked to the door, and opened it. Billy was standing there. Yolanda was behind her, half hidden like she was trying to use Billy as a shield. Billy was smiling. A full, confident, "I belong here" smile. She was dressed like she was going to brunch. Hair done, lip gloss, the whole thing. She looked past me into the apartment and said, "Hey, Reggie told me you were having people over. Thought we'd stop by." Before I could even open my mouth, Reggie's voice came from the table behind me, clear as day. I did not tell her that. I watched it happen on Billy's face. That little flicker. The smile didn't drop all the way, but it cracked. Yolanda, standing behind Billy in the hallway, looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. I just stood in my doorway, and I said, "You weren't invited, Billy." She laughed. That specific laugh she does when she wants you to feel like you're making a big deal out of nothing. She tilted her head and said, "Come on, don't be like that. We've been friends for almost 10 years. You're really going to shut me out over a few jokes?" The room behind me went dead quiet. The pizza debate stopped. The fork stopped. Every single person at that table could hear this conversation. They could hear Billy call years of body shaming a few jokes. Billy must have taken my silence as an opening, because she did what Billy always does. She moved forward. She took a step like she was just going to walk right past me into my apartment like it was her right. I put my hand on the doorframe. I didn't push her. I didn't touch her. I just filled the space. Billy stopped. She had to. Then the smile came back. Slower this time. Tighter. She squared her shoulders and looked at me and said, "Okay, so we're really doing this? In front of all these people?" I kept my hand on the doorframe and I said, "You came to my door, Billy. You chose the audience." Then she pivoted. She turned her body away from me and toward the table full of people inside my apartment. She raised her voice, not yelling, but loud enough that every single person could hear, and she said, "I just want everyone to know that I have been trying to reach out to her for months. I've been nothing but supportive," and she cut off all of us without even a conversation. She spread her hands out like she was presenting evidence. For about 3 seconds, it almost worked. I could feel the room tilt just a tiny bit in her direction, enough that a couple of people looked at me like they were waiting for me to explain myself. Then Mara stood up. She didn't rush. She didn't make a big show of it. She just put her napkin on the table and pushed her chair back and walked across my apartment to the front door. She stood right next to me in the doorway and looked directly at Billy with the same face she had at that brunch 6 months ago. And Mara said, "I was at the brunch." Billy blinked. You could see her trying to place Mara. Mara kept going. "I was sitting at the next table. I heard what your friend said about her food. I heard you laugh. And when I called it out, your other friend told me to mind my business. So don't stand here and talk about being supportive." The room went still. Billy's face went red. Not pink, not a little flushed. Red. From her neck all the way up to her forehead. Because she didn't know Mara was here. She didn't plan for this. Mara wasn't just a witness. She was proof. Billy opened her mouth and closed it. She didn't have a comeback for someone who was actually there. Then from behind Billy, still in the hallway, Yolanda spoke for the first time since they showed up. Her voice was small and tight and she said, "Billy, we should go." Billy spun around so fast I thought she was going to knock Yolanda over. Her face was still red and her eyes were hard and she snapped, "Don't start with me too." Yolanda flinched. The kind of flinch that tells you this isn't the first time someone has spoken to you like that. She shrank back for a second and I could see her doing what she always did, getting ready to fold, getting ready to follow Billy. But then something happened that I don't think anyone in that hallway expected. Yolanda straightened up. She stepped to the side. She walked around Billy like Billy was a piece of furniture in the way. She walked right past me in the doorway without asking permission. She walked into my apartment. She pulled out an empty chair at the table, and she sat down. Yolanda looked up at me from the chair, and her eyes were wet and her voice was shaking, but she said, "I'm sorry for the beach trip, for all of it. I should have said that a long time ago." 12 people sitting at a table. Mara standing next to me. Yolanda in a chair she pulled out for herself, and Billy in the hallway, alone. I looked at Billy. She was standing there with nobody behind her for the first time I had ever seen. No Kay nodding along. No Fern standing silent in support. No Yolanda following 2 steps behind. Just Billy by herself in a hallway outside a door she wasn't welcome through. Her voice shook when she spoke. Really shook. Not for show. Not the way she used to fake being emotional to win an argument. This was real. She said, "So that's it? Everyone just turns on me?" I looked at her and I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not satisfaction, just clarity. I said, "Nobody turned on you, Billy. They just stopped pretending you were right." She stood there. 5 seconds. Her mouth opened a little like she was going to say something else. Then it closed. Then she turned around and walked down the hallway without another word. No big exit. No last shot. Just the sound of her shoes getting further away until I couldn't hear them anymore. About a week later, my phone buzzed and it was Kay. She wrote, "I ordered you salads for 3 years and told myself I was helping. I wasn't helping. I was making sure I felt better about myself. I'm sorry." That was it. She didn't ask to hang out. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She just said the thing. The next morning, I typed back, "Thank you for saying that. I'm not ready to be friends again, but I needed to hear it." A few minutes later, Kay responded with one word, "Fair." A month after the dinner, I decided to do it again, but bigger this time. I invited the hiking group, Reggie, Mara, a few coworkers, and Yolanda. Yolanda had been coming around slowly. She didn't push. She showed up when she was invited, and she was quiet, and she listened, and she helped clean up after, and she was doing the work of being someone I could trust again. The night of the dinner, I stood at the stove, and I decided to make pancakes. The same pancakes I ordered at that brunch 6 months ago. The ones that started it all. The ones that made Kay say, "You're really going for it today, huh?" I made a huge batch. I put bacon on every single plate. I set the table, and I stepped back and looked at it, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Not because of how it looked, but because of what it meant. Every plate had the same food. Nobody was getting a salad they didn't ask for. Nobody was being sorted into a section. People showed up, and the apartment got loud and full the way it always did now. I sat down. I picked up my fork. I cut into my pancakes and took the first bite, and they were good. Really good. The kind of good that makes you close your eyes for a second. And right then, Mara raised her glass, and the table got a little quieter, and she grinned that grin, and she said, "To seconds." Everyone laughed. The hiking group banged the table. Reggie whistled. A coworker almost choked on her bacon. Yolanda laughed too. Soft but real. And I saw her reach for another pancake without looking around first. And I laughed the hardest. I was the biggest person in the room. That thought crossed my mind the way it used to cross my mind every single time I walked into a room, or sat down at a table, or put on a swimsuit, or reached for bread. But this time it passed right through me like a breeze through an open window. It came and it went and it meant absolutely nothing.